Good morning, everyone. We're gonna get started in just a minute here. We're gonna give everyone a couple minutes to get in and join the session. We will kick off in just a moment.
Can you hear me, Jordan? Yes?
Yes, I can. Yeah, you're coming
Awesome.
in clear.
Good deal.
Yep, just a few more attendees joined. I just want to let you guys know we will start in just a second. Someone told you to break a leg, Kevin.
Yeah. Is that a thing? You're not supposed to say thank you when that happens?
I guess that's bad luck. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. All right, let's see. Let me know if you can see my presentation.
Yes, your presentation is in. Your video is clear.
All right, cool.
All right, I think just give everyone a few more seconds. Kick it off here at 12:02. All right, we are on the clock. We are live. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on another wonderful Improving Lunch and Learn or Improving Talk webinar. Today we have Kevin with us. He is an experienced and solution-driven professional with strong experience as an executive account manager. Kevin leads cross-functional teams across multiple core areas of expertise at Improving. This includes data engineering, modern application development, mobile development, platform engineering, and agile training. Kevin is passionate about harnessing technology to solve complex business challenges. And before I hand it off to you, Kevin, I just want to let our viewers know that if you have any questions or any comments at any point throughout the call, very open. Kevin's happy to answer them. At the bottom of your screen, if you're in the Zoom client, you'll see a chat and a Q&A function. You can send them out there. If you're on the website, just post them in that lobby chat and I'll keep an eye out for them there. And without any further ado, Kevin, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for jumping in and sharing your lunch with me. For some that are in Essential, perhaps this is post-launch. So hopefully a few jokes here and there won't make you will keep you awake and as you digest your lunch. For the ones in the West Coast, I think it's still morning time. So good morning to y'all. Let's get started. So I hope you're ready for a slightly different presentation today. You may expect to hear about the latest in technology, AI, machine learning, and while it's certainly on the agenda, I brought along as just rather unexpected guest, the furry and humble Llama. Now, before you check your conference schedule to confirm that you're in the right place, let me assure you, we won't be talking about dietary preferences, migration patterns, or anything of that nature. Instead, we're talking about a slightly woolly journey into the world of large language models, or LLMs. So just like our llama friends can traverse through terrains and adapt through various climates, these LLMs can be super versatile and resilient, navigate the landscape of human language, transforming how we communicate with technology. So buckle up. Let's begin this llama-tastic first joke to explore the dawn of large language models. So how did it come about? How did it get there? Let's go back in history and perhaps capitalize on some of the major advancements in technology that led us to this huge boom in AI. Around 1960, somebody said 1967, it was the birth of chatbots. The very first one introduced was Elisa. And it first allowed for humans to interact with a digital entity. 1990s, fast forward to 1990s, where statistical NLP stand for natural language processing. It was a huge advancement for letting the humans being understood somehow to a very rudimentary level by computers. Now, keep moving, 2011, deep learning resurgence. Google Brain pioneers deep learning and natural language processing. We are building on top of each other. The biggest breakthrough was probably in 2017 when transformer architecture came about. What is a transformer? Essentially, it looks at all the words that you say like a bunch of puzzle pieces. And instead of just putting them together, it pays attention to some piece that are more important. Just like if you're listening to a certain story and you're trying to piece up the important part of the story, right? It's similar concept. So it's in essence trying to make a computer acting a little closer to what a human brain can do in a very segmented portion. 2019, contextualized representation. BERT from Google understands context. And then you get to 2020, GPT-3, which was the foundation of what we know to be ChatGPT when it was released in 2022. Actually, ChatGPT was released on 3.5, but GPT-3 was really like, okay, now we're meaning business. This is neat. So we get to 2022, and evidently this boom, the ChatGPT explodes, and it gets more signees in a month than Facebook has had in years. It's just, the numbers are staggering. Auto GPT comes about. All of these things just start happening. You may have heard all of these buzzwords and maybe never really paid attention to some of it, what it could do. And this is why I'm here for today, is to spend a minute to discuss in particular what large language model can do and how it can help you ultimately. Now, let's put aside the evolution of the llamas. And this probably was the most technical part of the presentation. Everything else from now on is very much applicable to your day-to-day and making you understand how large language model work through a few Llama jokes. Bear with me. So what is LLM, right? It refers to a type of AI model designed to understand languages from English to French. Thanks, Jordan. To English to French, Italian, over 100 different languages. It is able to understand it. It is able to understand the context in which you're speaking of. So if you are having a conversation with a large language model that is text-driven, meaning generating text, I'm already getting myself ahead of what we're going to discuss here. It's going to take in consideration all of the things that you've said in the past, and then build that as a context of your thread within that conversation that you're having. It generates different types of output depending on what it's been trained on. And you can see on the left-hand side the different types of what you can see, right? Text tighten, craft articulate outputs and understand context. They're conversational champs without the llama drama. And those are like the ones, the GPTs of the world, the Bard of the worlds, Llama from Meta, that really this whole presentation was themed after, is is another one. A very Llama 2, for example, is a very strong text generator type of large language model. But that's not just it. There's not just text-based large language model. You can also think of as a large language model as multimodal, and essentially it's able to treat things outside of text. So things like images. DALL-E is a great example. Midjourney is another example. In fact, you may think that I reach out to my buddy who owns alpacas to act like a llama and ask it to put a tuxedo on and make a photo shoot. No animals were on in the making of this, right? This is all of these funny pictures, these cute little fuzzy animals were generated by Midjourney. All I had to say is I would like a llama that wears a tuxedo and kind of looks like James Bond. Boom, here it is. Okay, cool. This is fun. We can illustrate what I'm discussing by simply just putting a few words together. I don't have the expertise to draw something like this, to model something like this, but rather some silly ideas that are in this silly brain that I put down, and then next thing you know, it illustrates it. I think this is just so cool. It can be your customizable companion, trained on specific data sets for niche outputs, your personal llama tailored to your pasture. Always on duty, 24/7 assistance, LLMs, the ever alert llamas on the lookout. Anyway, I can go on and on and on. They are essentially AI models that can generate some kind of output, right? So how did it come about? We talked about the history, the evolutions of the breakthroughs that got us to the first GPTs of the world, or excuse me, llamas of the world. But then how do you train? Once you make all of that technical advancement, how do you train such models? So before we even get there, let's just step back and just think about how we humans learn. We were once a child. There's, that's just evident. Everybody started there. We started learning how to walk. And how do we do that? We observed. We observed our parents, we observed our peers, our sisters, our brothers, anybody that is around you. There is an intense amount of observations. We listen to stories, and that's kind of got us to try to mimic it and see if we get a funny response or a good response. We're talking to people. We're producing words based on all of that experience. Harold, thank you. Love your comment. I'm keeping it on the side, by the way, so keep them coming. This is great. And so by reading books, all of these sets of interactions, whether with people, with physical books, with digital entities, whatever that may be, this is how we learn. This is how we study. And so the more stories you hear, in fact, the better you understand how words fit together. I will joke. My parents often ask, is like, "Hey, you'd be better in school if you read more." I think I'm not the only one that heard this before, and in fact, it couldn't be more true. Had I read more, maybe I wouldn't be here talking to you guys, perhaps. There's no harm in this, but maybe I'll be doing something different. And all to say is, the more context you provide, the better your brain gets, the more connections are going on in your brain. Well, guess what? Large language model, in some form, it's pretty much the same, right? The training part is different, evidently. It involves a few dining preferences, and then it also going to have a different interface, right? The accessibility is going to be different, and then the training appetite, they might be fairly similar. We'll talk about it in just a sec. And then the nature of the data sets, what you feed into that training to get you what you want, is going to be varying from large language model to large language model, but the outcome of it, the interaction with it, if you're in a text generation, are probably going to be similar. So let's stick around with just text generation for now, and talk about the difference between Llama 2, which was incepted by Meta, and GPT-4, which is the most recent versions of GPT from OpenAI. Llama 2 actually made their dataset public. GPT, OpenAI, not so much. They don't want to disclose. They're a little bit more secretive. Accessibility, Llama 2 is actually an open to the herd. Anyone can join the grazing. In other words, it's open source. You can download those bin files from 7 billion to 13 billion to 70 billion different parameters, and you can download them and experience them and consume them and play with them. GPT, restricted access. Evidently, they tied a partnership with Microsoft. In fact, Llama 2 also have a partnership with Microsoft, which is going to be interesting to observe. But yeah, they're a little more reserved. It's, if you want to really benefit GPT-4, you got to sign up for ChatGPT Plus, right? Which I did sign up. Training appetite. Man, if I knew that NVIDIA was going to be the backbone of all of this before November 2022, the people that invested in NVIDIA last year, for the long run, they're doing it good. NVIDIA has skyrocketed. Why? Because they're the backbone of all of that training. It's require GPUs to make all the connections between the data sets that you're feeding and the output that you're expecting, and GPUs are much more efficient than CPUs to make those calculations. So guess what? NVIDIA is going to be doing well, whether this is Llama, GPT, Midjourney, DALL-E, you name it. I mean, it's all of these large language model, whether this is text generation or image generation or sound generation, all of these are using some very large amount of GPUs. So I just wanted to give a kind of a quick little glimpse as to what that training data looks like. It's essentially a bunch of pairs of input and output. And when the training occurs, it's going to essentially try to best predict the most likely outcome based on what was said. It's all probability based, and if you feed an enormous amount of data, and that is pairs of inputs and outputs, then it draws the connection across all of these all of that data set, and then you get yourself a tool essentially that you can interact with. There's definitely more some complexity than that, but the goal is to simplify, just to kind of give you the idea. I'm going to pause there just to see if there are any questions on training.
I haven't seen any questions come in yet. But yeah, definitely, if anyone has any questions, this is a good time to ask them.
Awesome, thank you. So where do you find those LLMs? We understand now a little bit more how it's trained, how it get to be what it is. The LLMs, where do you find them in the wild? Customer service is probably the most prominent one. Those chat bots that you see on the front page that are just ready to help. Chat bots in the past were very, very segmented in ways that it can only answer certain questions because it was trained on a very small data set. With the capacity of large language model, you can now open it up to a wide variety of possibilities. And we'll talk about how this applied to the business towards the end of the conversation. This is probably the next half of that presentation. So the next piece that is obvious and is we've all been using, in fact, a great majority of this presentation was leveraging content or leveraging GPT to build contents. So those three little llamas hanging out looking at the camera were actually generated by Midjourney. It looks real. It's kind of hard to tell that it's not. Maybe around the ears, but it just looks so great. In the meantime, you're able to build more content to your liking to convey more messaging. And that's just an example. I mean, on YouTube, it's crazy out there. You can generate a full YouTube episode blueprint by asking, hey, ChatGPT, Llama, Bard, whatever, I want to create a video on flying squirrels. And I just want to make it funny. And then you type it and it'll give you that blueprint. All right, first scene, this is what you need to do. Second scene, this is what you need to do. And then go from there. So it definitely helps building content. Healthcare. I like the little cute joke there. Diagnosing data, no drama. No more llama drama in the medical reports. But there's more seriously, there's an incredible amount of momentum in healthcare taking on large language models as part of their own. And more to come on that. But something around mental health. How can a large language model be fine-tuned to help with mental health? We all know mental health is a huge issue. Can that be a form of interaction that helps tame certain part of psychology that are difficult to control? I don't know. But what I know is venture capitalists are spending a lot of money in that. Finance, crunching numbers, not grass. Financial prediction, sharper than llama's ears. More seriously, if you actually feed the data inside a GPT model or LLM, it does a very good job analyzing that data set. It's pretty incredible. So we're going to talk about the worries. It's not all fancy. You know, with all the goods, there's always a side of bad. Yeah, we'll get there in just a second. And then last but not least, this is probably one that is a very interesting topic. Education. How can LLM help in education? You've heard recently, shortly after GPT was released, the state of New York banned it. The worry that educators have that students are going to use that to not learn anymore. But if you ask me, I think it should be embraced. If you think of the way calculators made a dent in science and engineering, back then, a lot of math was done by hand. In fact, Hidden Figures, one of my favorite movie, illustrated how complex it was to send someone to the moon. That is, of course, you have to believe that we sent somebody to the moon. But the number of computations were done by hand. And so fast forward, and all of a sudden, you've got a calculator that can do very complex computation at your fingertips. Did that make that person any less worthy? I don't know, tough to tell. Yeah, certainly the mental math piece was not done by them, but it accelerated the advancement in science because they have a computer at their hand. They have a calculator at their fingertips that they can punch things on, and it produces an output. Is large language model any different? I don't know. I think if I was an educator, I would probably try to lean in and say, maybe we could look into embracing it and see how it can help our kiddos reach further boundaries. Just a thought. So like I said, not everything is good, right? It sounds all fancy, but there are definitely some limitations. Hallucinations are the big one. LLMs sometimes daydream. They just make things up. And it's in part because the number of parameters were not big enough to make the proper determinations of the next words to use. Speaking of which, let's just jump on that. Parameters, just a quick little parenthesis. Parameters is essentially the number of nodes in this training thing that are happening to better predict and make connections across all of that data set that I showed you earlier. And so the bigger the number of parameters, the more connection it can create. Therefore, the less likely it is to hallucinate. That's the point I was trying to tie in. And it's definitely an issue. And so this is why having that interactions between the human and the large language model can be bad in some ways if you believe wholeheartedly whatever ChatGPT says is the truth. No, use your critical thinking. It's like, does that really make sense? Is that true that those words that are happening? Perhaps not. But think of your Pareto principle. Can it help you 80% of the way? If this helps you 80% of the way, then that's okay. Maybe 20% of the time you need to pay attention and figure out whether it's hallucinating or not. Another limitation is the model moods. There's this concept of temperature in large language model that is hot or cold, and depending on what the settings you put it at, it will be relatively unpredictable on the outcomes of it. And so then it'll just be back to the business. If you one day want to build a AI LLM based solution, then you should think about what kind of predictability you would like to have. There is some case it make it as creative as possible. So maybe increase the temperature. But in others, if you're trying to answer a FAQ and letting your chatbot discern that, you probably want to be very, very predictable, because you want to guide the customers in the most efficient way. Context blindness is another concept. They might miss a broader picture, and that's just simply because the data set is not big enough, right? As the analogy that I made earlier, the bigger the data set, the more it can create connections. And so it won't know everything. It knows a lot of things. But that certainly can be something of a concern. Lack of intuition, again, it's all data driven. Bias, pitfalls, yes. Some llamas can favor a certain part of the patches, some grasses, right? But in all seriousness, it's just, these are human built, and behind all of what we do, whether this is conscious or subconsciously, we're going to be biased to certain things, and the outcome of that solution ultimately becomes evident. Creativity and then last but not least, dependency. This is a tool. This is not a crutch. This is not helping you how to walk. This is a tool so that you can hopefully run. Hope the analogy makes sense. So that I see a few questions. This is great. I'm going to pause there. This is kind of like my half presentation, even though I have technically a few more slides than the one I've shown so far. I will pause for questions, and then I see one from Vaughn. So is Llama a magnitude more limited than GPT-4, or pretty on par? Excellent question. So I'm going to be specific, Vaughn, in Llama 2 is definitely significantly better than its predecessor. And arguably from a test taking standpoint, I think GPT still has the edge. But the fact that Llama 2 is open source makes this whole aspect of, well, I don't want to share my data to OpenAI. I don't want this data to show up at a different part of the world, or for them to retrain on my data. And so now all of a sudden, in terms of value, then Llama 2 becomes much more valuable, I think, because you can host it within your own organization. So I think Llama 2 is much more valuable than GPT-4, in my opinion. But in terms of the ability to accurately provide outputs that either are, to answer a test or whatever benchmark you'd like to use, I think GPT has the edge. But that margin is narrowing for sure. Ron, I hope that answers your question. Yes, perfect. Yes, indeed. Kevin, will you provide resources to learn more about hallucinations and model moods? That's a great question. I can certainly try to provide some of those. I will make a shout out in the end to one of the podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis, and you may be able to catch some of his episodes that I think he addressed some of these. But yeah, more to come on that, Kev. Great name, by the way. All right, so any other questions? Did you see Jordan? Have I missed anything?
No, you got them all.
Okay, awesome. All right, so how can LLMs help you? Let's first look at it from a single standpoint. How can it help you individually? Let's Llamify your productivity. Email enhancer. we write emails all the time. Whether you are in development, you're in HR, you're in marketing, you name it, you write emails all the time. There are moments when you need to craft emails in a certain way that there's a certain weight behind that email. There's a certain importance behind that email. And so how can you ensure that the words that are in your mind are eloquent and making your a message come through? This is where large language model shines. I was not born in the US. I was born in Europe. So I had to learn English on the fly. And even if I feel confident that I can speak English fully now, I still have moments where thoughts in my brain are just not quite lining up correctly. I cut a few pieces together, and with the ChatGPT as an example, I've used that quite heavily to, this is what I'm trying to convey, but I'm just not quite get there yet. And so then I'm having this conversation with this entity that is formulating texts that are like, oh, of course, it makes more sense to write it this way. And what's cool about it is it's just like having that tutor that looks over your shoulder 24/7. And it's just, this is the point down below. A tailored tutor is somebody that just is ready to help anytime. And so if you think of all of the outputs that you are building, whether this is email, coding is another one, any sorts of documents, words, you name it, the productivity, I think, is going to be enhanced because you should be able to get better clarity in what you say, and you should be able to also get faster words out. Because even though there is some back and forth between you and the AI, the outcome of it is just, and you may put it into the word just as is. This is up to your own risk. Of course, verify what it says, make sure that it doesn't hallucinate or things of that nature. But the words being provided then is probably just as fast, as not faster, than what you would do if you just crank it out. Like I said, if it was just me, I cannot crank out English words so majestically. Kind of came up with that joke. It's just it's challenging. And so in the professional world, how do you make sure that you sound more professional, that you sound more clear, all of that? Code Companion, how do you use that? Yes, it understands C sharps, it understands Python, it understands SQL, it understands all of these coding principles, and it even understands what you're trying to do, and interprets what you're trying to do. There's certain versions or plugins of ChatGPT or Copilot in Microsoft that allows you to, like, all right, what am I doing here? Is that correct? What an advancement in engineering. And so based on the interactions, you're refining what you're looking for to do, and all of the error codes that you're experiencing, it can help you there too. Give them the output of that error that you get, and then it'll help and guide you. It's incredible. We've talked about documents, research wrangler. This one is probably ones that you want to, I don't know, in my personal opinion, cross-validate. Don't just believe what has been trained on is accurate necessarily. You want to go back to the hallucination. But if you're asking about GPT about World War II, chances are it's probably right. It's probably right. It probably read a lot of different World War II based texts that were historically correct. But if you ask, hey, what's happening in Ukraine right now? Well, frankly, since the fact that it's been trained up until 2021 in the ChatGPT 4's case, then of course he won't know about what's happening in Ukraine. But even leading to 2021, anything COVID related, it's like, oh, I don't know. It's not going to give you the best answer. So again, for research, super useful stuff. Just depends on the nature of the research. And I would probably advise to in this case, cross-validate. Creativity, that's really, really neat. All of these funny, I think if they're funny, jokes about llamas, a lot of them were found by the ChatGPT for this presentation. And so these are things that I just wouldn't necessarily come up other than, hey, I'd love to make a connection between llamas and this llama at the seam in what I'm trying to talk about, which is large language model. And so it spit out a few things. That's pretty cool. But again, I didn't take a picture of a llama sitting in front of a laptop. This is all generated by Midjourney. I'm not gonna take any credit for this. Midjourney has done all of that, and all I did for this is, I don't know, something like I want to see a lot. Imagine a llama that is standing at a desk in front of a laptop, and I use the word minimalist. I think that was my prompt, and then whoop, this is what he came out with. Pretty cool stuff. Jordan, I have used ChatGPT to help break down complicated documentation for certain libraries when programming. Yeah, for sure. Hey, there's a documentation that you're inheriting. Depending, I'll put some caveat here, right? Depending on the types of documentation, don't just blindly copy paste into ChatGPT. If so, make sure that you have checked it will not be used for further training, right? Because there could be some information that are then shared to OpenAI that you would want OpenAI to know. But if there's no PII information or anything of that nature, then you might be okay. And so this is where it becomes very powerful to have a super large text and say, hey, go ahead and summarize it in 5 sentences. What's cool also you can do is explain it like I'm 5. This is probably, my wife will probably say that where my brain is most of the time, I act like a 5-year-old. It's okay. I mean, she's not wrong. And sometimes I just need that dumbed down explanation. And so when there's something complex that I'd like to understand, is using that feature just opens you up to more things. It just, you're learning about more things, right? I think this is fascinating. To help fight against hallucinations, look into tree of thoughts prompting. Thanks, Vaughn. That's a good. Maybe you can post the link in the chat. That'd be great. All right, we're doing good on time. I'm gonna get back to probably the most important piece. So, large language models in businesses. Okay, boosting the bottom line with less bit. If you take as an example the onboarding process, pre-COVID, after doing a few Google searches, folks stay on average on white collar type jobs 4 years. And so this means that every 4 years, there would be that rotation of personnel. So at that point, a large amount of knowledge is leaving the door. So the company is left with a hole, essentially, not only just from a productivity standpoint, but also that knowledge that the person that accumulated over time. When the next person comes in, they're probably going to spend on average 3 to 6 months to really onboard. And so what if you would reduce this time 3 to 6 months, maybe sometimes even a year, to help tailor a large language model that would reduce that time by X. I don't know, it could be half. Even if you're shaving off a month, I think would still be predictive. And by that I mean, I'm looking for someone that does this, who can help me out. Maybe you can pass in some HR information. And so the large language model understands who's what and point you to the right direction. You work in a consultative firm, like I do, and I need to know if we've done this before. Who can I reach out to? Well, you'll see in a minute. I'll talk about who improving is. We have a lot of people across the North America, and to find out if we've done something in certain areas, there is a back channel that we have to figure out when we've done this before. Okay, that chase might take me a while to figure out who did what. And so what if you had that personal helper that could guide you to the right person? Onboarding wise, if a new salesperson comes in and wants to know about all of the solutions that we build, wouldn't that be amazing? I think it's extremely valuable. Let's talk about sales supercharger. Yeah, AI assisted sales pitches. You're trying to pitch to an upcoming client. Maybe you look on their website, you take their website, you scrape some of that, you post that into your large language model, and really refine how you would like to make a sales pitch about anything. Versus before, there's an incredible amount of research, you need to skim through all of this. All of a sudden, you have this tool that can really help accelerate the output. How long is it going to take you to put a sales pitch together? Maybe you're amazing. You can do that in a couple of hours. I'm not. Maybe I need that assistance. Maybe there are more people like me that needs that assistance. Knowledge keeper. I've hinted on it earlier with the onboard piece. When somebody leaves the door, knowledge is gone. Despite their goodwill of saying, I'll be around, I definitely don't want you to. But guess what? Chances are they're busy with their next endeavor. So the chance of them actually getting back to your question in a timely fashion, probably not going to happen. Versus having that assistant that come and help. Wouldn't that be cool? Customer care companion. We've hinted on those 24/7 chatbots for instant response, right? That instant response. I don't have to wait for Joe somebody to get back to me. If that entity knows just as much as that Joe somebody about that one little piece, that right there is time efficiency. Internal innovator, foster intra-team creativity for brainstorming tools, your team's new Llama muse. Good times. Finally, return on investments revolution, from saved time to increased conversions. See the return skyrocket. And that's what I mean, like all these little things, your individual productivity boost, right? You can hopefully generate faster outcome, but then also generate things that we never thought was possible before. And all of that reduction of time ultimately is going to pay out. All right, I'm going to pause before I step into a little bit of who we are. Jordan asks, what do you think LLMs will be used for the future? Do you know of any interesting applications where we're starting to use these AI model with? Maybe with research or something else. So this is a perfect segue, Jordan. We are actually working on projects that I've hinted on with the knowledge of the companies. So think of it as the knowledge keeper. Companies have an enormous amount of documents. that not necessarily have folks looking through all the times, but some of that knowledge is historical, and it might be challenging to actually search efficiently. Even if Teams or SharePoint or wherever you store your information have gotten so much better at searching keywords, it still don't understand the context in which those documents were built. And so that navigation is something that we're currently building right now. And not only that, we're hearing more and more calls coming to us and asking, I'm interested in this. I want to talk more. Little shout out, in the coming month, this quarter, we will have an executive workshop for folks that are interested in actually building these types of solutions. So if you have any questions, let us know. We can certainly point you in the right direction and get you signed up for this upcoming seminar. Research is certainly something that is going to be used, but remember that if you're talking about research from a technology standpoint, large language model only know what it's been trained for. So for them to come up with breakthroughs, even though we're hearing some buzzwords around that, it's unlikely. It's perhaps the interaction between the person and the large language model that led to a breakthrough, not the AI spitting out, oh, this is how you should do it, right? We might get there at some point, but we're not there yet. Maybe medical research, medicine, medical assistance, scientific discoveries. Yeah, so very much that is that interactions with the AI entity that probably can help foster more creativity. But as far as I know, humans are still leading the charge by a long shot. In fact, if you take, just for giggles, if you look at self-driving as an example, where Tesla claimed, and I love Tesla, this is, I absolutely love it, but this is not the purpose of the conversation. They have said self-driving is going to be available very soon, and I'm still waiting. I'm still not confident when I turn it on that it's actually going to drive me efficiently and so or safely. Just going over a 2-lane road, that doesn't feel good. So all of that scare of how AI is taking over your job tomorrow, I'm not going to go into this political debate. I know that there's some fear around this, and some of them are vetted, some of them I don't know. But all I'm here to say is it will take time. It is not tomorrow. Even if the outcome of these things are scaling rapidly, there still need a lot of human inputs. Any other questions, Jordan?
No other questions at the moment.
Awesome, thanks.
More for me. But again,
Hey, thanks.
everyone. Yeah, I encourage anyone, if they have any questions, definitely ask.
Yes, please. I only have a few more slides. So a little bit about us. Improving, we have 17 offices across North America, from Mexico to Canada. As you see, we're over 1,500 people, and so the example I was telling you earlier is finding out who does what can be a challenge, even at our scale. What do we do? We've got expertise across all of these areas, AI included. And so if you have any questions, particularly about how LLMs can help in your business, come talk to us. Lastly, what we stand for, where we lead with trust in our day-to-day engagement. The piece that I'm very proud of belonging to is conscious capitalism. I won't divulge into it, but all to say is we have a purpose, and we focus on making our stakeholders happy, and essentially that our bottom line is healthy, just like any businesses. But then how do we also promote local communities is something that helps with our culture, it just helps all across. It's super cool. You should look into it. If you have any questions, again, happy to talk to. And then last but not least, I promised you a little shout out. A shout out to Jason Wilson, who is the host of Everyday AI. Our very own Eric Bowman's recently have spoken on this platform. If you want to know about what's going on in the world, he is, for the most part, on every day providing a new podcast. It's relatively short, usually lasts less than 30 minutes, but you always get good tidbits about the news that are going on and then the theme that he'd like to talk about. So highly recommend it. If you want to know more about AI and all of the things that are happening in large language models and their applications in the world, shout out to Jason. He provided me with this presentation, and so thank you for that, Jason. But yeah, I highly recommend. That wraps it up. If you have any questions, please reach out. This is my email. This is my Twitter feed, and we have a bunch of improvers that are here ready to help you. And let us know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. We did have one more question pop up in our Q&A section.
Yep.
From an anonymous attendee, how quickly could an LLM solution be stood up at my company? Example, like the onboarding helper. How long might that take?
It's a great question. Thank you, Mr. Anonymous. It will depends on the size, of course. Depends sounds too vague, but think about it from what you're trying to achieve. If it's a matter of onboarding just to solely train on documents that you have within your organization and then help fine tune that, maybe a couple of months. But if this is something that can be much broader than that, it can take much more. Again, it will depend. It's hard to give a very strong answer, but please reach out to me directly, and let's have a conversation. I think it's worth having a conversation and finding out what you're looking for.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think reaching out where we can sit down and kind of figure out exactly what it all entails is probably the best way to kind of address those questions. But yeah, we're always here if anyone has any questions. And I want to thank you guys, our viewers, for joining us today. Be sure to join us next Wednesday. We will continue our AI discussion with GitHub Copilot 101. It's another AI tool developers use when programming. And again, if you have any questions, reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.